For the first time in 2,906 days, we can finally say it. Colombia are back in the World Cup. We'll preview the big debut against Uzbekistan right now. Welcome to episode number 1 of the Colombian Soccer Show. My name is Juan Pimiento. Thank you so much for joining me on the relaunch of this big venture, of course, a passion of mine, the place for all things Colombian soccer, whether you're Colombian, whether your parents are Colombian, your grandparents are Colombian, your girlfriend is Colombian, your boyfriend is Colombian, whether you're living Colombia, whether you're just simply a soccer fan who likes Colombia. If you speak English and you want to know about Colombian soccer, this is the place for you. So make sure to like this video, make sure to subscribe, make sure to follow us. We're also, aside from YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitch, we're also on Instagram, on TikTok, as well as X with all kinds of content. We've been uploading videos, reels with history, with culture about Colombian soccer as we get underway in this World Cup. So make sure to follow all our social media accounts so you don't miss a single piece of content. Everything Colombian soccer in English, this is the place for you. Now today, of course, we're about a few hours away from the big debut, Colombia against Uzbekistan at Azteca Stadium. I can say it, I don't care if FIFA doesn't want us to mention any brands, which I don't get with Azteca because it's not a brand. But anyway, I'll say the name of the stadium here, Azteca Stadium, historic Azteca Stadium, of course. The big debut tonight after so many years, after the heartbreak of missing out on Qatar 2022. We're back. Now, I know that, of course, the road to 2026 hasn't been quite as dramatic, maybe hasn't been quite as heartfelt, if you will, because, of course, the expansion to 48 teams, more teams from CONMEBOL made it to the World Cup. Colombia made it third. So technically, Colombia didn't need the extra spot. That was for Paraguay, and Bolivia couldn't take advantage of it. But Colombia made it through. Now, it's been a roller coaster, to say the least, with Colombia and the men's national team since basically the highest of highs, which was that final against Argentina in the Copa America, also on U.S. soil. That was 2 years ago. The last 2 years have been very rocky at spots. We haven't seen Colombia reach the level that we've seen reach in Copa America. Before Copa America, Colombia, let's not forget, went on a big unbeaten streak leading up to Copa America. And the team hasn't been seen at that level again. Only at spots, at certain games against certain opponents, but ever since then it's been very inconsistent. Now, if you watch the game against Jordan, the last friendly in San Diego, if you watch the previous one against Costa Rica in Bogota, the big farewell with Carlos Vives and all kinds of fanfare and partying in Bogota, you might get an idea, if you combine the two, of what Colombia are about to face in a few hours in Mexico City. Let's talk about Uzbekistan, a team that is debuting, of course, in the World Cup. So we're not talking about, again, a team that is simply just a random team. We're talking about a squad and a country that have been so close in the last World Cup cycles out of Asia. Finally, they broke through, and they made it not via the playoff. They actually made it second in their group. So we're not just talking about, again, a random appearance here. We're talking about a team led by a name you may remember, of course, from 2006 and other ventures, Fabio Cannavaro, the former Italy captain, Real Madrid and Juventus stalwart. He leads a team that, again, very similar to what Jordan and Costa Rica did in the friendlies. Way back, low block and counter. A recipe that for Colombia sometimes has been very difficult to break down. On offense and defense, Colombia has become very vulnerable to counterattacks, to quick counterattacks. Colombia, when you have guys like Davinson Sanchez and John Lucumi and Jefferson Lerma, the Palace guy, as the three guys in the middle, the triangle basically responsible for the balance and the defensive solidity of the team, they can be left alone very easily when you have attacking players like Daniel Munoz, like Johan Mojica, like Richard Rios, who we'll talk about in a minute when it comes to his spot in the starting 11. Colombia, again, very vulnerable and prone to counterattacks. That's when the team suffers. And Camilo Vargas, can only do so much. So Uzbekistan is exactly that's what Cannavaro is going to do, or try to do at least, against Colombia. Now, as far as names, there's one name. We'll put it that way. There isn't like the one big name carrying the country on his back to the World Cup. But there is one name that I think most people would know, coming from the Premier League, of course. We're talking about the big defender from Manchester City, Abdukodir Khusanov. 22 years old, we saw him grow tremendously during this EPL season as City chased the title. He's fast, he's tall, he's athletic, very good on the ball, of course, being a Pep Guardiola guy. On defense, he's the reference. Now, he's one of three because Uzbekistan play 3-4-2-1. So, again, that low block, very crowded center of the midfield, very crowded center of the box. Colombia struggles with that, and Khusanov will be the one guy in the middle to try to keep everything under control and erase guys like Luis Suarez, like John Arias, and even Luis Diaz when he comes into the box looking for headers, which is what usually happens when Colombia face a low block. It's just peppering of crosses, of lobs from James and Richard Rios and Lerma, looking for Luis Diaz, looking for Luis Suarez, center forward. Sometimes successful, most times it really isn't. Khusanov is the guy. Now, on offense, if you follow Italian soccer, if you follow Roma, you know the name from recent years, Eldor Shomurodov. He's the guy who leads the attack, the experience playing at the European top level. He now plays in the Turkish league. A guy who is a forward but moves about the area very wide. He can come, of course, track back as well. So he's not going to be just a 9 in the foxhole. He'll move about. Behind them, in support, of course, one of the young guys. Maybe you haven't really heard of him, but if you hear the pundits and the experts, he's actually been one of the names mentioned as one of the young guys to watch in this World Cup. We're talking about Abuzbek Fayzulayev. Creative midfielder, he and Shomurodov will be the ones leading the attack basically. He can operate also very freely in between the lines. So he's, again, one of those guys who, when Uzbekistan go on the counter, or even if Colombia concede the ball, because we've seen that happen also. Colombia's not a team to really press high anymore. I miss those days, actually. Let's talk about that, because if you remember when Colombia went on the unbeaten run, right? Beating Germany, beating Spain, the comeback against Brazil, the comeback against Argentina. Colombia were very more about intensity, about pressing high, about speed on the counter. When you have a guy like Luis Diaz, that's what you do. That's where he thrives, is on the counter with space. Let him use his speed and his technique to basically break down a defense on the run. Colombia get away from that. And we've seen Colombia now more about, yes, pushing up the lines on offense, but when it comes to getting the ball back, they tend to just get back into shape, medium block, low block, and give the ball away for stretches that seem forever. And I get very antsy because, again, we have a team with the speed, well, for the most part, and the intensity, who are used to playing this at the European level. Even a guy like John Arias at the top Brazilian level, who can go get the ball on defense and press high and really become a nightmare for opposing defenses, especially a guy like Khusanov, who can play the ball from the back. You want to pressure the guy because either he loses the ball or his teammates lose the ball. Colombia get the ball high up in the area. Not have to worry about breaking any low blocks down, because there is no low block when you recover the ball in the opponent's final third. And get all these guys going from Colombia. Again, Diaz and Arias and Suarez. That's what I wish Colombia would do. Doesn't happen, so what can we do but be patient and hope for the best? So when it comes to Colombia, I think that's the approach, right? You want to attack Uzbekistan on defense, basically. You want to pressure, you want to avoid any transitions from the back who can compromise guys, again, like Davinson and Lukumi and Lerma. Now, the starting 11 for Colombia, let's talk a little bit about it. I think we can all expect exactly the same 11 we've seen now for months. Vargas, Camilo Vargas on goal, the Atlas guy, Daniel Munoz, Davinson Sanchez, John Lukumi, Johan Mojica, Jefferson Lerma, who, again, he's very much a key piece on both sides of the ball, distribution and also on recovery. but he can be left alone and unprotected very often. He's been playing with Richard Rios the last few years during this cycle. Rios, his spot is the only one, according to reports, that might be in danger in the starting 11. In his place, Gustavo Puerta, Racing de Santander guy, second division in Spain, who was one of the stars, the captain, of course, of one of the most recent under-20 teams for Colombia that made it into the World Cup. A guy that I like very much personally because he brings you a little bit of everything. High energy, high intensity, can help you on defense, can help you on offense. But again, to me, it's more about the physical aspect. And if you want a guy who can help Lerma, especially defend transitions, I think he's the guy. And this is why the rumors and the reports are pointing to Puerta as being the guy maybe to take a spot in the 11. We saw him against Jordan, against Costa Rica. Had pretty good showings. He's still a very young guy. So if you want a guy, again, who can help on both sides, Puerta is the guy. I think he's earned it. And I think, honestly, for this kind of games, maybe he's better off starting. And if Colombia are having difficulty breaking down the low block, then you bring in a Richard Rios, who, of course, technically gifted as anybody in the Colombia squad, who can have actually a very good long-range shot. We saw it in the Copa America. He scored that great goal against Panama. But I see him more, again, in a World Cup setting where intensity matters, speed matters, defense matters, especially in transition. Rios is better suited, I think, as an alternative who can help you if you're struggling offensively in the second half. James Rodriguez. And we'll dedicate a whole episode to James once the World Cup is over, because this is the last dance. This begins the last dance for the number 10. And you guys know as well as I do, he's a guy who's become, at the late stages of his career, a very controversial guy. The team is built around him, basically. Colombia, from the coaching staff to the federation to a lot of fans, hold him in very high regard. They still remember, of course, 2014 and subsequent campaigns. He is one of the GOATs. That is undisputable. But what is James Rodriguez in 2026 at 35 years old, coming off barely playing for Minnesota United here in the US? How much can he give you, really? Again, at the highest level physically, because with James, it's about his physical traits diminishing significantly over the last few years, to the point that Colombia, for the most part, when they face an opponent, they're playing, or mostly defending, with only 10 guys, because James struggles defensively. That's one of the reasons why Colombia get caught on the counter so much, because, again, James simply just doesn't have it anymore in the tank to help defensively, especially in a breakaway situation. It kind of reminds me, if you're old enough, and I'm going to age myself a little bit here, in 1998, if you remember, of course, France 98 was basically like the last chapter of a generation, the first golden generation for Colombia, and the big linchpin, the big leader, the captain, Carlos Valderrama, 38 years old, broken down physically, can give you sparks of brilliance, right? Of talent. A pass here and there, move around the ball, hold the ball, the things that talented number 10s do. And I feel like this World Cup for James is very similar as far as the vibes that is giving out. James, of course, we know is key when it comes to set pieces. James, we've seen him, of course, led Copa America in assists, had more assists, of course, in qualifying. So the talent is always there. But again, I asked myself, and I asked you guys, and you guys can comment here, how much can we realistically expect from James at this level during the World Cup against not even teams like Uzbekistan or Congo, but against a Portugal? Honestly, I don't know if I wouldn't start him against Portugal, but we'll talk about that, of course, when we get to the game against Portugal in Miami. But for now, we know James will captain the team. He'll start, of course, in just a few hours against Uzbekistan. We have Luis Diaz, who the team should be built around, but it's not. John Arias, who's coming in great form. If you watch the game against Jordan especially, man, that guy, you can tell he's back. You can tell he's back. The move back to the Brazilian league, to Palmeiras, really did him a lot of favors, a lot of good, because we've seen the shifty, the agile, the very talented John Arias back again, to the point that he scored a couple goals against Jordan. If he plays centrally, and I know with Lorenzo it doesn't always happen, the coach, he can deploy him, of course, wide to the right, which puts him in a position to be more of a defensive stopgap than an offensive threat. If Arias can combine with James and Suarez and Luis Diaz, can penetrate the box centrally, John Arias, and you can bookmark this, can have a great World Cup if he's allowed to do his thing. If he's allowed to do his thing, which again, with Néstor Lorenzo, doesn't always happen. So watch out for John Arias in this World Cup, because he, at the level he is, can have a great showing for himself and can really lend a huge hand to James, to Diaz, and the Colombia team during this campaign in the World Cup. Luis Suarez, I mentioned him, the number 9. Expected to be the number 9, of course, coming off of a phenomenal season in the Portuguese league, leading goal scorer for the team. He only took the Colombia starting job, let's not forget, in March. He had that incredible 4-goal performance against Venezuela, and he's been the striker since, after so many months of guys like John Cordova and Rafael Santos Borré and others who've come in as center forwards, Cucho Hernandez, John Duran, who can't put the ball away. They can't finish. And it's aggravating, because that's the same problem that make us somehow miss the World Cup in Qatar 2022. Hopefully Luis Suarez can carry that form into this World Cup, because Colombia are going to need him badly. We can't rely always on James and Luis Diaz for goals. James is not a goal scorer anymore. He'll give you a penalty. He'll score you a free kick, maybe. But as far as goals, it's mostly about Luis Diaz, and Luis Diaz is going to get double teamed and triple teamed. He's going to get his ankles completely scratched by defenders. So Luis Diaz can only do so much, especially again for a team that doesn't lend itself really to put Luis Diaz in the best position to be himself and make a difference here in the World Cup. So that's the breakdown for tonight. Of course, in a few hours, again, Uzbekistan and Colombia. I'll be live after the game with the recap, the analysis, the reaction, the venting or the celebrating. Hopefully the celebrating. I think it'll be a 2-0 win. But let me know. What do you think is going to happen? What do you make of James? What do you make of John Arias, of Luis Diaz? What do you think is going to happen today as Colombia, after 8 years, 8 long years, make it back to a World Cup here in North America 2026? We'll be back here again on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch live with the reaction. So join us again. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscription. And also, during the game, head over really quick to our Instagram, our TikTok, and our X accounts, the Colombian Soccer Show, all over social media, so you can follow us. All the content, all the reels, all the live reactions, the previews, and all things Colombian soccer here in this project that I like to call the Colombian Soccer Show. Thank you again for joining us. Follow us again on social media, and we'll see you again in a couple of hours for the review of Colombia-Uzbekistan in the World Cup. See you next time.